Usually, before a Dharma talk, when we are in the Zendo, in person-to-person Zendo, I would go to the altar and light some incense, offer incense, and do 3 bows. And I did that before we began practice today. And it puts me in mind to remind all of you that I'd like to encourage you to, before you join in a Zoom service, or even during your daily practice time, that you make a ritual of offering incense at your home altar and doing 3 bows as a way to honor the practice and the ancestors who brought us this practice, and the companions in the timeless way. You can bring to mind that whenever you're offering incense, chances are there are thousands of others who at this moment around the world are offering incense. There are so many of us practicing in this way at this time of the Earth's life. And in the many who are and many who have in the past endured great difficulties and challenges to practice. And we have our own inner and outer difficulties to practice. But we continue to, in our attention to sit, in our habit, in our ritual of sitting, we gather our energies and intention to abide in open awareness, to encourage the habit of open awareness in this moment, which is the only moment. When we practice our formal practice, we are really setting a rhythm of being present. We're setting it in ideal circumstances. When we're sitting still, there's not a lot going on around us. We have nothing else to do at the moment but be. So that we have the mind of the present moment well established. Chosen has said, Chosen Roshi, my teacher, said we practice in the good times for the difficult times. And we could ask, well, what times are these? Are these the good times or are these the difficult times? We can say very difficult. These are very difficult times. And it's also a time of unprecedented possibilities to finally break through the deep, delusive mind in this civilization that's threatening all of the life on this planet. What do we associate with good times? Well, in good times, the overall structure of our daily lives remains constant, pretty constant. And even when we encounter difficulties, we adjust to the twists and turns and the changed plans and the delays and the frustrations and the unexpected windfalls. And our days contain mostly the familiar, with a peppering of unexpected circumstances. This is what we call the good times, the usual, the normal. The rhythm at these times is rather fast-paced and overly full for many of us. And there's a hurry up that the daily schedule often imposes that we're really used to. And we don't even notice it. We're so used to it, we don't even notice it. Except now we're starting to notice when we don't have it, going on. When we're overly busy, when we're really pressured by schedules, we can complain about them. We can complain about feeling overwhelmed. But even this complaint is part of the usual. It's part of what we are accustomed to. We assume that we know that it's really busy, I'm really overwhelmed, and I will be tomorrow too, which is part of my sense of having a place in the world and being productive. This sense of overwhelm is part of this feeling that, well, I guess I'm being productive. And at that time, we're also making plans. We're really caught up in our plans for the future, of what's coming next. But now, part of the disorientation that we're all feeling is really not knowing what comes next. We don't know day by day what comes next. We thought we did. Everybody was getting ready to jump into getting back to normal, kind of mindlessly getting back to normal, a kind of normal that really none of us wanted to have, but at least it was normal. But now everything is different. We don't know what's coming down the pike. And a lot of the things that we foresee are not things that we want, or not things that we think we can cope with, or a lot of things that raise a lot of fear in us. So our practice is particularly potentialized at a time like this. And we have the good fortune of having a practice that all along has been asking us to stop, to practice stopping and listening. For a lot of people, the stopping that has been enforced has been really anxiety provoking. Some because of the financial difficulties that are besetting more and more people. But mostly it's the internal mind state that is particularly distressing, and the lack of going about and distracting and entertaining. So some of you, would you raise your hand if you heard Andrew Harvey this morning? Did anybody attend that? There are a few of us who were there. We're going to try to post the tape of his talk. He was extremely passionate, very articulate about the current circumstances. And I really encourage everybody to listen to his description of the world as it actually is. I don't know that anybody was there who couldn't agree completely with his description of what's going on. So we were freshly reminded there of meditation as a radical action. The importance of becoming familiar and at ease with stillness and being able to rest in a quiet body, which is really essential in becoming a mature human being who can respond to the conditions that we probably will be facing, are facing, with a sense of equanimity, courage, creativity, and certainly a sense of love, compassion, patience, at ease with not knowing, not really knowing what to do. So even in practice, if you're only at the stage of just imagining what it might be like to have a quiet mind, imagining this possibility or what it would be like, you're already engaging on the path of waking up to reality. There's something that one of my favorite Tibetan masters said. This is Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche said of this. He said, "The arising of the thought of enlightenment is the single most important moment in a person's life." And that thought arises when we turn our intention to cultivating a stillness and silencing thoughts to discover our deeper identity, what we call Buddha nature, the root of our life. That is the moment when it first occurs to us that this is something of supreme importance to do, even if we are far from knowing how to do it. So some of us are longing to experience quiet mind. Even those who have practiced for a long time, at times have difficulty returning to quiet mind. And some have access to this awareness already. But together we all turn toward it when we engage in meditation, and we help each other when we do it together. This is part of the treasure of a Sangha. And you may notice when you meditate with other people how much easier it is. It's just warm water and slip into it. And it's through this complete action of silence that we can discover what's true. The ruts of belief and reactivity can be observed and eased, where compassion surfaces to overthrow injustices of all kinds, injustices in our own minds and in the world. Being able to be in touch with compassion even when we are witness to the violence of ignorance and greed. And where we can feel compassion even for when the tyranny of our unexamined mind takes hold. We see this enacted in a lot of our governors at this point. The tyranny of unexamined mind, the tyranny of leadership that has not examined the truth of this life, the interdependent truth of this life, and the brevity of the conditions. When we're able to be free of our mental chatter, we can let the gentle breezes soothe and lift us up while we sit on a branch with the birds and enjoy the warmth of the sun. Just the simplicity of being a creature in the natural world, which we all are, but we tend to forget this. We are natural, we're part of nature. We are an aspect of nature. Zazen is a practice of the natural self. You know, I find it really helpful to think of that sometimes when I find myself going into a tense, kind of strained approach to meditation, to remember, no, this is the natural mind. And immediately I have that thought, I relax. It's a practice that moves at the pace of life. And ordinarily we're speeding way ahead. But we have to really let ourselves, when we do our meditation, just move at the pace of life. As our practice matures, we're really able to put the inner and outer distractions aside when we sit for meditation and just be with what is. And we gain the wisdom that's always available. It is our nature, our Buddha nature. And it comes naturally when we listen deeply to the stirrings of the natural world. I so encourage people, especially now that the weather is so lovely, to meditate outside, to hold a vigil outside. We can begin to fortify our ability to see and hear clearly through the din and delusion that clouds our hearts and blinds us to our true life conditions. It's really easy to fall into meditation becoming just like everything else, just another thing we have to do. It's really important to remember, oh no, this is not just like everything else we have to do. This is just allowing ourselves to be. And to be able to respond to what is. So we practice in the good times for the difficult times. Which are these? Practicing in the good times for the difficult times. We could also look at that in the course of a day. Meditating in the morning. We're rested. We've had a cup of tea. We've maybe bathed. It's quiet. Things have not gotten started yet. These are the good times. And then the day starts. And these are the challenges that come up. But we've already practiced, and it is a way of beginning the day with wise mind, of establishing our open heart and our intelligence as the basis of facing the day. The Dalai Lama there's a new film out that is about the Dalai Lama's life. He made it in celebration of his 85th birthday, and he is the one who narrates. And in that he says, in a time of great difficulties and tragedy, that unbearable feeling that you get can translate into more constructive power. And that he said during the course of talking about what happened when he was forced to flee, and when the Chinese came in and took over the country and killed many, many, many of his fellow country people. In a time of great difficulties and tragedy, that unbearable feeling, he talked a lot about feelings that you can get, can translate into more constructive power. He told the story, and most of you know this, of all the studies that were done of the monks that were held in prison for many, many years. And when they finally got out, they didn't have any sign of post-traumatic stress. And it's because their practice in prison, even during torture, was the practice of compassion for the profound ignorance and suffering of their torturers. And that really demonstrates the possibilities for all of us of our practice to go really deeply, not just a little idea, but to really take it to heart. So he's telling us from the wisdom of his 85 years that great difficulties are the very conditions that call forth our power. What is known in Sanskrit as bala, spiritual power. This is the same thing that Martin Luther King talked about. Spiritual power, the energy that comes from staying present with an open heart to the real conditions. And when we talk about spiritual power, thinking about what spiritual means, it's not kind of a Walt Disney type ethereum, but it includes, our spiritual power includes all of our powers, our mental, emotional, physical, energetic, inspirational, and communal power. The power that we feel when we participate in or are witness to the demonstrations that have been going on, the nonviolent demonstrations, the beautifully articulated determination not to let the violence against anyone continue. the violence of our civilization. That's real power. So one of the difficulties that many are having at this time of COVID is being locked in with our own minds. This is a sickness in our civilization, where we're so cut off from our relationships. In fact, only our minds are cut off. Any place that we are in full relation with the world, with the natural world and with the built world. And we see, by missing that, by missing all the relationships that we do have, we're seeing that many people would rather go out and risk getting sick and making others sick rather than stay inside with themselves and their own minds. It's a very, very narrow, there's a great narrowing of the heart and the mind in that experience. And when we have to go out and risk our lives and the lives of so many, this is not listening to the guidance of this virus. I've mentioned before that we would do well to consider the virus a bodhisattva. Engaging in bodhisattva activity to a deeply sick civilization. Chosen gave a talk recently about how what we are experiencing now has happened many times in the past. And she gave us examples, times of quarantine, which actually some of you may remember at the time of the polio epidemic in the 50s. There were a lot of, we couldn't go swimming. There were things that we couldn't do because of the fear of catching polio. She also mentioned scarlet fever, which is one of the epidemics, or one of the quarantines that she experienced when she was living in upstate New York as a child. And before, and many times in the world, there has been economic collapse. This has all happened before, but never before have 7 billion people had to figure out a way to share the resources of and support the earth of a collapsing climate situation. Never before have over 7 billion people had to figure out a way to share resources. 7 billion people. You know, at the time of the Buddha, the Buddha was a revolutionary. He wanted to introduce this way of recognizing what we do with our minds as a way to help people wake up to the choices we have and the way that we could live as enlightened beings. But at that time, there were many fewer people on this planet, and now 7 billion and steeply rising. We're facing the culmination of thousands of years of a civilization that's been devoted to domination, the domination of nature, and a wanton use of the resources, which are freely given. So we've been in recent, 10,000 years was the beginning of farming, maybe longer than that. To deny the interdependence and impermanence is astounding. How much we have forgotten. How much we depend on the generosity of the earth, and we have used up the systems. We've forgotten that we are not separate from the earth, and have been creating the conditions for an extreme die-off that includes us. So we're still talking about, and maybe if you listen to the news tonight or read one of your sources, you'll see getting back to normal, that phrase. But this is a delusion. We're still talking about who's to blame while the virus continues to inhabit its host. Not only our bodies, but our minds. The virus is inhabiting our economy. It's powering the delusions that underlie a political system. It's kind of revealing the delusion that has underlain our political system that depends on inequality and greed, and the hostilities that can be manipulated to feed this system. The virus has affected us so much more than just our bodies. And there's always someone to blame, but the thing about an epidemic is that there is nobody to blame. We can't blame the virus. We always look for others to blame, but how can we blame a virus? Viruses are real, they're not just interpretations. Viruses are reality. We have 10 times more viruses than bacteria in our bodies. And 90% of serotonin, which is the happy drug, is manufactured in our gut by viruses. I was reading a paper from the World Economic Forum, and it said there are several bullet points that I thought were worth sharing. There are 21 viral types that wreak havoc with the human body, but this represents an insignificant fraction of the 100 million viral types on Earth. Most viruses are actually vital to our very existence. They comprise a tremendous amount of our DNA. The elements that support the food web are put back into circulation with the help of viruses. And it's the combination of high bacterial growth and viral infection that keeps ecosystems functioning. We're making an incredible discovery about viruses. They are not other than us. Viruses are normal. If we want to get back to normal, we're mistaken. This is normal. This is universal normal and how life goes. The viruses morph and new ones arise. That's the nature of viruses. Impermanence, interdependent arising. So who is to blame? How can we recover the way it was? Our suffering, as the Buddha taught, comes from wanting the basic nature of this world to be other than it is. But the nature of this world is what the Dharma is. The Dharma means phenomena, the nature, the law, the way that it is, the way that things are. And the Dharma is reliable. It's dependable truth. So when we wake up to it, we have a great advantage in being able to reckon with our real situation. So this morning, Andrew was saying, and after he gave this extremely eloquent description of the grand one mind and heart and holy sacred world of life, he came down to some very modest recommendations. Calming ourselves, which we do in meditation, and appreciating the possibilities. Appreciating the possibilities. Accepting the immediate without having to know, without a plan or a theory. Being able to calm ourselves and be present and be able to rely on our habit of presence. whatever we notice we're feeling, whether it's fear or dread or hope, to be able to stay steady, to get to the very root, the very source of whatever it is that we're feeling, the very heart that is free from suffering and can guide us to wise action, if there is any action to be taken. Meditation inoculates against despair. Loving and wise action brings us into alignment with what Andrew called in his talk a torrent of grace that is heading towards us. It's an interesting way to look at this pandemic, at this climate collapse, at the economic collapse, as a torrent of grace that is heading toward us. The only thing that could really seriously kind of collapse our delusion that the way we're living is sustainable. Our practice of presence helps us to recognize every opportunity that we have to live the Bodhisattva way, the way of caring for all beings, the way of being honest, modest, relaxed, truly alive. So just to reinforce, wearing a mask is a bodhisattva activity because it preserves the possibility of awakening. It helps us stay alive so that we can be present and helpful. And we also wear them as an enactment of our realization of interdependence. We wear a mask to keep others healthy. So this is just a little reminder for us all. Oops, I've just lost my screen. Oops.
We can see and hear you just fine.
What should I do? I can't see you anymore, but I heard you. So I really want to encourage all of us to remember to turn toward our practice as sacred activity, as the basis for how we're going to approach whatever is coming down the pike. To recognize that it is the foundation of maintaining goodness and sanity in a world of profound transition. And may we all settle into practice and have faith in this way of practice. Thank you.